My biological mother gave me up for adoption after Dad died and had an affair with my uncle. Years later, she found me online pretending to reconnect. My mother recently got in touch with me, a 17-year-old girl, after we hadn't spoken for 10 years. When I was 7 years old, she placed me for adoption, and happily, I was able to locate a family that would adopt me. I will refer to my biological mother as Julia and my adoptive parents as Mom and Dad for the sake of clarity when I describe what transpired. At the age of 20, Julia gave birth to me with my biological father. I was the reason she had to leave college. They were married shortly after my biological father's graduation from school. He was diagnosed with leukemia when I was about 3 years old, and he died not long after my 7th birthday. Since my mother gave me away and I moved in with my new family just one day after my dad's death, I suppose the process of relinquishing custody had already begun long before his death. Even though 10 years have gone by since then, I can still recall everything as clearly as if it were yesterday. I was really angry and perplexed by what was happening. Many people assured me that I would be all right, that my father was in a better place, and so on, but all I wanted was to check on him. Even though he had been quite ill, he was always available when I wanted to visit him. But after Dad died, I was not even permitted to bid him farewell. When my new family arrived the day after my dad's death, I had hardly had time to register and process these things. According to my mother, these individuals would look after me for a few days, but those days quickly grew into weeks, months, and years. I continued to wait for my mom to get in touch with me. At first, I recall crying a lot about this because I felt like my mother and my family had deserted me. My biological grandparents visited me a few weeks after my parents took me in, and they have remained in contact with me ever since. I was too young to hear the truth at the time. However, they were no longer able to avoid my questions when I was about 14. Since I was well aware that I was adopted, I simply wanted to know what had occurred with my birth mother. I clearly recall getting along with my birth parents when I was younger, so I was just curious as to why all of this had occurred. Eventually, I learned the truth from my parents and grandparents. It seems that my mother was distraught to learn that my biological father had leukemia. However, she began an affair with my uncle rather than supporting him. Even while that was terrible in and of itself, no one was aware of it until 6 months prior to my dad's passing. At that point, my father's health had begun to deteriorate significantly, and Julia knew she wanted to be with my uncle as soon as my father was gone. So they decided there was no use in continuing to hide their romance. My uncle and Julia discussed it with their parents. Despite their clear revulsion at what was happening, my grandparents